how ACOA's COVID-19 assistance can help your business. I know you all read about what the webinar was about, so I won't read the introduction, but it is a great opportunity to hear about the programs that ACOA has for businesses or associations and organizations to take advantage of and participate in. And at the end of Kent's presentation, if you're just hopping on now, just so you know, at the end of his presentation, which is about 30 minutes, we'll do Q&A, which you can put in the chat as we go along, and we'll do them at the end. And as mentioned, this session is recorded. So we will be sharing it on our social media, YouTube channel, and sharing it back to ACOA for them to share as well after the presentation. So Kent, without any further ado, I'm going to turn the mic over to you.
Thanks very much, Krista. Now I'll test out my abilities here, and I will share a screen. I just want to make sure that everyone can see that screen. You can see it. Okay, perfect. All right, thanks, everyone. All right, good morning, everyone, and thanks again, Krista. Juste avant de commencer, j'aimerais dire que mes commentaires aujourd'hui seraient en anglais pour la plupart, mais toutefois, je vous invite à me poser vos questions dans la langue de votre choix à la suite de ma présentation. So I really appreciate the opportunity to meet with you all. And I note that this meeting follows a conversation that Minister Lee actually had with the Fredericton Chamber a few weeks ago. Since then, in fact, yesterday, we've announced new programming. And so today's session is very timely in terms of us perhaps being able to flesh out a little bit more of the details of the new programming for you. I'll note, though, that it's still fairly new, and we're still working out some of the finer points and details of the terms and the delivery, but I'll share with you today as much as I can about what we know. And so I've got a little bit of a presentation. As Krista said, it's 30 minutes long. There should be plenty of time for questions at the end. For those of you who don't know me, my role is Vice President responsible for ACOA, New Brunswick's operation, but I also carry some Pan-Atlantic files as well. Before I jump in, I did want to start by recognizing the good work being done by the Chambers of Commerce across New Brunswick and really across Atlantic Canada. From our perspective, they've certainly risen to the challenge here. I personally am benefiting from the daily updates that the Fredericton Chamber had put out initially. It had some excellent information and content, which I even passed along as well. There's so much information swirling around, and it's so important to have a reliable source for that. And so I want to thank you for that. And as well, the recent publication that's come out as a guide for reopening businesses. Information sharing has really been incredible, and so thanks for your efforts there. The other point that I wanted to make before jumping in is in terms of the business community in general, I think it's really important to recognize that many businesses have come a very long way in many respects in a very short period of time to adapt to the current realities. And so from our perspective, really all of this sums up to a tremendous amount of leadership here that we've seen locally in the face of the challenge that we've been facing. And so it's really important, I think, to take stock now of that capability as we look forward to the future. So with that, I'll jump in a second. There we go. Make sure I can, oh, there we go. Okay. There. So some of you may be familiar with ACOA, but I suspect some you might not be, so I thought I would take a moment to kind of go over how we fit into the federal landscape. So ACOA is part of a network of federal regional development agencies across the country. Many of the agencies are structured very differently, and they deliver different mandates depending on where they're located, because they are meant to respond to local realities, local economic conditions, assets, and threats and opportunities. ACOA here, for our part, we've always looked to work very closely with local partners. So here, Chambers in New Brunswick, Opportunities New Brunswick, CBCs, Ignite, and we've been very careful to try not to replace anything that's already underway, but rather to to attempt to complement it or accelerate it. We've been very closely monitoring the COVID-19 challenge, its impacts on local businesses and economies. And we have points of contact all through the province and officers stationed all throughout the province. We're headquartered in Fredericton. And also I might add that as a federal agency, we have a bit of a line of sight on the full suite of federal programs that are out and some that are lined up potentially. From day one, just a little bit about how we've responded. Like many others, we haven't been in our traditional offices. We've been virtually connected, but I would say that we got off the ground pretty quickly. Our staff has been continuously engaging in conversations with various stakeholders and our clients on the challenges that they're facing. We're trying to gauge reactions around the programming that's been announced. And we're trying to serve as a conduit as much as we can with that information back to Ottawa so that they can adjust. And on that note, there have been a tremendous amount of programs announced, both federally and provincially. And there are updates daily, as I'm sure you all know. And we've seen, I know that we've seen these programs put together pretty quickly. And the changes that we're seeing in the new programs that are coming on stream are really, I think, reflective of the feedback that governments are getting in terms of trying to strike that right balance and trying to get at the real needs that are out there. Okay. So this slide speaks to the agency's mandate overall and on our spending and on our priorities. And I won't spend a lot of time on this other than to say we've been around for about 30 years now. And in that time, we've established really good roots with our clients and our stakeholders, good relationships. We deliver our own funding. We have about $275 million funding for the Atlantic that we distribute. And that translates to about $80 million delivered in New Brunswick, if we look at last year, for example. In a normal year, we do about 300 deals. And the agency aims to focus about 60% of its funding to commercial business and about 40% to business support type activities. So organizations that support business and governments and with making sure that the infrastructure is there to help them. But we do more than fund projects. We do also bring stakeholders together. And by stakeholders, for example, it could be academia, business, governments, and NGOs. Bring them together around various topics. We've had tables on immigration, on skills development, to try and advance strategies around sectors of key importance for the region. We do a lot in that respect on tourism, on ICP and startups, and on food as well, including seafood and agriculture. In addition to the money and to the coordination function, we also are called upon to represent the interests of Atlantic Canada on the national scene. So trying there to reflect the priorities that we see in order to make sure that those are considered in national policies and programs. And so with all of this, we're gonna keep focus on this broad objective going forward. But currently, of course, we are focused on relief funds to mitigate the impact that we've all been seeing. And I'll get into that in a couple of slides. We have a number of programs that we administer normally, and they're here. I'm really only going to refer to two of these today that were impacted by yesterday's announcement. And these are the REGI, the Regional Economic Growth Innovation Fund, and this Community Futures Program, the CFP. In Atlantic Canada, under the Regional Relief and Recovery Funds, which was announced yesterday, the RRRF, those programs, REGI and CFP, were topped up by $110 million across the Atlantic to deal with COVID-related impacts. So the New Brunswick impact of that, in case you're wondering, is around, we think is going to be around $33 million. So that will be in addition to our regular programming and available for us to deliver. The REGI component of this is delivered directly by ACOA to the end recipient. The other component, the Community Futures Program, is funding that ACOA receives, but then we redistribute it among the community business development corporations that are around the province, and there's 10 of them. CBDCs, as we call them, are normally mandated to deal with sort of the rural, the Main Street type businesses, including retail and restaurants and that sort of thing. But for the purposes of this new programming, we're in discussions with the CBDCs to provide assistance, not just in rural areas, but also in urban areas of the province as well, including Fredericton. And so in that way, it's very similar to what the province has done with the CBDCs with their working capital program that they announced a few weeks ago. And the CBDCs are delivering in Fredericton there as well. So we're looking just to sort of bolt on to that. In terms of, there we go. In terms of adjustments that we've done to our existing program offering, we have a few things that we've done there. We've deferred repayment for all of our existing clients. They didn't need to ask. We just deferred it automatically for 3 months. We are monitoring that situation very closely to determine whether or not additional deferrals are going to be required. And we'll respond to that as we see that situation unfolding. And we've looked at our programs and our processes more closely to make sure that they're as flexible as they can be under the circumstances. So there we've adopted a new working capital program. We've streamlined our internal processes to get us quicker turnaround time on our applications. And then we've really boned up on our information provision to frontline staff and onward to clients on all the programs and services that are coming on stream. In addition to this, we are proactively bringing organizations together to look at creative solutions to some of the challenges that are posed by COVID-19, including helping companies adapt their production processes to make personal protective equipment, for example, for health professionals or for other frontline workers or essential workers now. And so in this regard, we've got a task force that we've established and in a list process, and I note that many are into this as well, looking to connect up businesses that need PPE or organizations that need PPE with those that can supply it. We've also been engaged in providing funding to some businesses as they pivot in that direction as well. And maybe perhaps one of the best examples of this effort is a local community, a local company, Lumen Ultra, which you may have heard already referenced in the media a few times, who are ramping up very quickly to supply 500,000 COVID-19 test kits per week out of Fredericton. So that would be an example, I think, worth noting and celebrating. So in terms of our the existing programs that are being offered, as I said earlier, there are a lot. It's evolving continuously, and I don't believe that we're done. I think that we'll see more of these being announced in the coming days and weeks. And so what we're trying to do is offer support for clients to navigate the numerous offerings from a variety of agencies, and we're doing this in a number of ways. We're working with the province. They have a business navigator service that's in place, which will provide that kind of basic information to folks. We also have the Canada Business Call Center. And so those two organizations are working together. We've increased our infrastructure and our personnel to handle inbound calls there. And we've also developed a bit of a toolkit for our frontline officers, our economic development officers, which we update daily so that they can provide the most up-to-date information to our clients. I'm not going to get into all the programs that are available today, but I do think some of them need to be highlighted for one principal purpose, and that is the assistance that was announced yesterday for ACOA to deliver is meant to fill gaps that exist from what's already been announced. And so it's not meant to be more than, it's certainly not meant to be less than, but it's meant to fill in gaps that have, where these programs haven't been accessible to businesses. And so in some respects, the financing that we're aiming to provide might mirror closely some of the things that are out there. So I think I'll go through a few of them just to make sure that we can anchor what our assistance might look like. In the first instance, as you probably all are aware, there's the Canada Emergency Business Account. That's the $40,000 working capital loan, up to $10,000 of which can be forgiven if repaid by December 31st, 2022. And it's open to businesses with payroll expense between $20,000 and $1.5 million. And so there, we may see new applicants come in who are not able to qualify through that particular mechanism, but we may be able to offer something that is similar to that if you don't qualify in the traditional way. In addition, there's the business credit availability programs. Those are loan guarantees and lending programs through BDC and EDC. They apply their criteria. If clients aren't able to access funding through those organizations for whatever reason, we'll take a look at the application as well. And then there's the Canada Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance Program, which is delivered through Canada Mortgage and Housing. If for whatever reason that's not something that can be accessible, that's also something that we can look at through our programming. Then there's the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy Program. So that's the 75% wage subsidy to keep employees attached to employers. This subsidy is open to entities that can show a decrease in revenues, that show a decrease in revenue of 15% for March and 30% in April, May, and June. And we've just understood in recent days that this has been extended. So a 30% drop in revenues is required before you access it. The difficulties there have been for some startup firms who have been in growth mode and couldn't show that drop in revenue, or for some tourism operations, for example, who really wouldn't have had revenues until later on in the year, and so they're having difficulty qualifying for those. And so that's what we're thinking we're going to be aiming for as we look at applicants that come in who aren't able to qualify for those. There's also, so that's for business, but for sort of the smaller businesses who may come through some of the programs for individuals at this time, there's the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, or the EI benefit for self-employed individuals, which provides a fixed amount per month for those whose jobs have been impacted by COVID-19. We believe this would have been available potentially for very small businesses that either aren't incorporated or may not have had a traditional payroll, and they may be accessing those kinds of funds. So we'll be looking at some of that as well. So the RRRF, which I'm going to be talking about in detail in a minute, is this complementary measure, like I say, not to replace, but to substitute if people can't access those programs. And the intent here is that applicants would first apply, or at least attempt to apply through those regular programs before they come into us. So, as I said, it's $110 million for the Atlantic here, and I have one summary slide for this program. Like I say, just announced yesterday, still putting the finishing touches on it, but I will share, at least verbally in this presentation, a fair amount of detail on the program so that folks can get a sense of really what's being offered here. But I would say, and you can take notes, it'll be recorded as well, but again, all of this information is available either through Canada Business, the call center, or ACOA staff. So first, in terms of access, there are really two principal ways to access this funding. If you're a current ACOA client, we would encourage you to contact your project officer to discuss your specific needs. For other clients who wouldn't normally be ACOA clients, and that includes those who would be in retail services, restaurants, bars, maybe services of a personal or social nature, those kinds of organizations, they would contact their local CBDC if they're in a rural location. And as I mentioned before, CBDCs will be delivering this through urban as well, but in the meantime, if businesses in urban, in Fredericton, that are in those categories, they can contact Canada Business to get more details in terms of how to proceed. And we'll provide those numbers in a minute. We're really hopeful that CBDCs will be in a position to receive applications very shortly on this. We've been engaging with them over the past number of weeks on a national basis to kind of coordinate how this is going to roll out. So this is new to them, but we do have to put finishing touches on an agreement before they can take applications. So a little bit about the program overall. Assistance for business is meant to be generally repayable. However, there is a provision to mirror, in some cases, the Canada Emergency Business Account, the CEBA, where there's a 10,000 forgivable amount, up to 10,000, for example, and we can mirror that. If clients are unable to access that funding, that's what they need, we'll be able to mirror that through a ACOA program. For repayable contributions, there will be a 2-year grace period. So no repayments will be required for 2 years. So that grace period ends on December 31st, 2022. So payments will only start back to ACOA on January 1st, 2023. And our anticipation is that there'll be a 3-year repayment term for that. So over 3 years, so not pay back until 2025. So assistance provided to, that's for commercial business, assistance provided to non-commercial business. And included in here are a category of not-for-profit entities that provide technical support to businesses to help them mitigate COVID-19 impacts. That would be non-repayable. So not all non-commercial applicants are contemplated here, but if they're in the business of assisting business deal with COVID-19, then they're included in the eligible category. If you're a business, you need through the process to demonstrate some financial hardship due to COVID-19. And you have to also indicate that you haven't been able to access the support, or there's also a category where even if you have access to the support and you continue to experience financial hardship, so if it wasn't enough for you, you also may be eligible. So you've gone in, you've got the CEBA, your needs are exceeding that now because this is going on longer than what you anticipated. Also come in and see us, and we'll see what we might be able to do there. We also would note, though, that businesses they're required to describe their plan for business continuity to kind of bridge the gap from today to recovery. So in that respect, we will need some cash flow projections as well as recent financials. But I will say the application process is fairly streamlined. It's available online now. Take a look at it. Each application will be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. We're going to be as quick as possible in assessing these projects. Those in good order may take as little as 10 days to be processed by ACOA. And once an agreement is signed by an applicant and struck between ACOA and the applicant, we can advance up to 50% of the approved assistance immediately. And then the rest of it will be paid through some kind of a claim process. So eligible costs for the program include rent, lease payments, salaries, property taxes, utilities, even bank interest, other fees, insurance, other fixed overhead costs. And if you have any costs that are related to adapting your business to PPE, for example, one-time stabilization expenditures, that kind of thing. The things that we won't do included in that list are we cannot refinance existing debt. So that's not something that this program will do. And we can't provide financing for purchase of land and those kinds of things. But for most of those costs, those softer costs, operating costs, we're there. Assistance can be up to 100% of eligible costs. And I would also note that businesses that are in sectors that are critical to the resilience and the survival of our economy, such as advanced manufacturing, ocean industries, clean growth, and tourism, may be given priority here as we go forward. And in addition to that, we're also looking at businesses that are critical to local economy. So a major employer, those who have a really key economic presence in the community, they also may be given priority as well. So ACOA and the CBDCs, we're making every effort to extend this programming to as many businesses as we can to ensure no business is left behind. But I do need to know, the demand for funds may, in fact, exceed what's available. So we'll have to keep a very close eye on that. We're accepting applications now online, as I mentioned. We'll continue to accept those applications until March 31st, 2021, or until the funding is depleted. So whichever comes first. So at the end of this, I'm happy to take more detailed questions. I would note, though, that the basic premise, as I mentioned, is to fill gaps at this stage, really because there's so many programs that are available. We're really unsure of where the gaps are and then ultimately what that means for demand on the RRF. So we'll be looking to, like I say, monitor that closely and potentially adapt our criteria as we go forward, depending on how that goes. So that's the RRF. In terms of other things we've been contemplating going forward, whereas the RRF is really aimed at mitigation efforts, we are looking to recovery as well. We're starting to look at recovery measures and what businesses may need in the future. We do anticipate, as many do, that priorities are going to shift as we emerge from this COVID-19 landscape. We want to make sure we have the right investments and that we're calibrating where we want to make our investments to help companies grow and remain competitive and sustainable as the economy shifts. And so just a couple of things there that we're contemplating. I won't go through the whole slide here, but we're engaging with stakeholders on initiatives such as digital infrastructure. This crisis has really shone a light on some of the gaps that we have in terms of coverage, in terms of speed. And so we're looking at a province-wide, looking to assist in a province-wide initiative around digital infrastructure, hopefully. And as well, cold storage for food, seafood, and agriculture products. Those are a couple of examples of areas where we may want to look at some kind of strategy going forward for food security purposes, and then really kind of get us on the right footing to operate more digitally as an economy as we go forward. So hopefully here, in terms of Main Street support, you may have heard that term used a few times. We are aware there's a lot of buy local campaigns that are on the rise, and we recognize there the Chamber, along with Downtown Fredericton and Business Fredericton North, and the City of Fredericton, in their involvement in support Fred Local. And ACOA, from our perspective, we'd be very open to amplifying these kinds of efforts, because we know that promoting local shopping, staycations, particularly given the border situation, are really going to be key themes going forward as part of the recovery effort, and so that a really important source of revenue for businesses. And we'd look to work there as well with all the local partners. We have long-standing relationships with CBDC Southwest, Ignite Fredericton, in programs to directly support Main Street businesses as well. So other things that we're seeing kind of on the horizon and trying to work on right now are coordinating efforts around e-commerce and digitization, ensuring businesses are equipped either from a sort of technical standpoint or a skills standpoint to operate more on a digital platform, which has become obviously key to sustaining business. And I understand the Chamber also has some webinars in this regard, but ACOA is supporting as well LearnSphere, who are a local firm here in Fredericton. It has a couple of sessions coming online soon in the retail space and restaurant services and bars, just to provide some sense in terms of how to organize around this, what's available, how to what the e-commerce platforms, for example, are there, and these are available at no cost to business. at this time. So essentially, that's it. In terms of contacting, I'll put the contact information here, and I'll make this presentation available to Krista as well, so that she can further distribute this. I would ask, leave you with this: there is no wrong tour. All levels of government are working here together to pathfind, and it's an unprecedented situation, and I think we've seen unprecedented cooperation among governments and other stakeholders to really lean in and provide the necessary support. So here, call the Canada Business Call Center, NB Navigators program. Your chamber obviously has got some great information. The CBDCs or ACOA. So with that, I'm happy to open up the discussion now. If you have some questions in the chat function. Alors maintenant, je prendrai vos questions.
So thank you, Kent. That's good information. We appreciate that. So far, there are only a couple of questions in the chat, and I put them both in there. So I will read my questions, and then by then people will have time to type their questions, and we'll share those. So you mentioned that small and medium enterprises can apply for this loan through Canada Business, which is for the urban businesses, or CBDC for the rural businesses, and 10K is forgivable. What is the actual total amount of the loan, and is it only available? I wasn't clear on if it's only available to those who did not receive or were not eligible for CEBA, or is it available to others as well?
So, okay, the first part of that question, just to clarify, our anticipation is that it is going to be the community business development corporations who will receive those applications for retail and non-typical, non-ACOA type clients. ACOA clients will receive the application. If you're a typical client of ours, you qualify for the CEBA type assistance if you haven't been able to qualify through the normal process. So let's say your payroll doesn't qualify. It's you don't have 20,000.
Right.
You've maybe got another compensation scheme within your business, so you qualify there. But depending on what kind of operation you are, you may go through the CBDC door, or you may come through ACOA. And if you do, and that's what you're looking for, you'll get up to 40,000, okay? And 10,000 of that will be forgivable. But in addition to that, if you are another kind of business that already got the CEBA, and you need more because 40,000 wasn't enough, and for whatever reason you don't have enough working capital, you've accessed everything that's out there, then you should also come in to either us or the CBDC, depending on what kind of business you are, and we will look to see what your needs are. We may be able to extend more. We won't be able to give anything more non-repayable. If you only get one non-repayable contribution of up to 10,000. But we may be able to look at additional working capital in excess of what you receive through the CEBA.
Okay, so if you receive the CEBA already, you may be eligible for more loan, but no more grant. If you are not eligible for CEBA, you should apply, and you need that support, you should apply for this. And where you said the applications are available online, and I see Patrick Lacroix posted the link for the application, and that's for any of our chamber members at this point. They should go on there and apply there if they were not eligible for CEBA.
For CEBA, if you are a retail, if you're not an ACOA client already, right, you should contact Canada Business, and they'll provide you additional information.
So not this link?
Not this link.
Okay.
Currently, because what we're looking to do in urban, in Fredericton in particular, is work through the CBDCs, and then you would apply through them. For if you're a restaurant, if you're a retail operation, if you wouldn't normally qualify for ACOA assistance, you wouldn't be a normal client of ours, then we'd be directing you to the Canada Business or the.
And the portal for that is a number to start or a website to start?
for
Canada
community
Business.
Canada
Yeah,
Business is a number, and we can get you the number, and then they'll direct
sure.
you to the right.
Let's post it in the chat if somebody has it.
Mhm.
The next question is, first of all, thank you for your presentation from Bill
Oh, yeah.
Chong. Could you share about the difference for your program, REGI and BDP and AIF? How is the qualification?
So with respect to this particular relief program, it's all being delivered through REGI the REGI program. BDP and the AIF programs are part of our core offering. They still exist, and we still have money that's available through those programs. They follow our normal terms and conditions. So if you set aside everything I said already about RRRF and all the new relief measures, they would be there. That program is existing to help companies expand, to help companies market, um, to acquire new technologies, for example, and all the regular co-offerings. And again, if you're a business that is looking to do some of that, we would encourage you, and you're eligible through COA programming, we would encourage you to contact your COA office. And we've actually got that on the contact slide in the presentation. And they'd be happy to guide you through all the terms of those programs as well.
Thank you, Kent. The next question is from Emma, and it's one that I know a lot of small businesses have asked about. She mentions that during a recent webinar with federal ministers, there was mention of a grant program for PPE that was required to reopen that was going to be announced. So is that wrapped up in this funding, or do you know how people can access that? Because certainly pretty much every business that's opened their office, including, by the way, the chamber office, is spending money putting up plexiglass walls, all kinds of different social distancing, and then there's gloves and masks and signage and floor decals and all kinds of things that we're spending money on that are outside our norm. So is the funding for that in this program, or where is that available?
So there is funding available in this program that's available for that, but it is not non-repayable. But I would like to highlight a few things that are non-repayable, and that is if you've accessed the CEBA, the 40,000, we know that 10,000 of that's forgivable. The wage subsidy, of course, is forgivable. I know that recently there was an announcement for agriculture producers that does contain a provision for non-repayable assistance for PPE. And there may be others kind of that come forward over time, but for today, the non-repayable components are really as I've outlined.
Okay, so nothing specific to PPE at this point?
Nothing specific that's a grant, but certainly PPE is eligible under this program.
For loans, okay.
For loans. Now, I say that, but then if you get a loan, if you're looking for the CEBA loan and there was that 10,000 non-repayable, that's
it could fit in there, but
it can fit in there, but it's nothing specific.
I will mention that I believe Downtown Fredericton Inc. and also Uptown St. John have put out small up to $500 grants for their members for PPE, but I know that the actual total amount they had available was very limited. So that, if it has not run out, is probably close to. So if you're a person whose business is in the area of those organizations, you might want to reach out to them.
Also, yeah, you tweaked something for me. I might also mention this, right? There are provisions under this existing program for a non-commercial operation, so a not-for-profit organization who's providing technical services to business to receive non-repayable funding. So if, let's say, some of those services included how to adapt to the current situation, how to reorganize your business, we may be able, through a third party, to be able to provide that kind of service to business, but we wouldn't be able to deliver it directly.
So, for example, those downtown associations, perhaps the fact that they're supporting organizations with PPE,
Right.
they might be able to apply for this. Okay, that's good information. And I think we've got, I know Trina's on the call today. I'm not sure if other downtown associations are, but Trina from Business Fredericton North is. So there's some good information for you, Trina.
Mm-hmm.
The next question is from Jordan O'Brien. As a new business that works in the B2B space that has not experienced revenue loss because there was no previous revenue,
Right.
but has had actual and potential clients back away because of the impact to their own businesses, is there a program that they can access?
Right. And yes, for sure, this would be in that category. This program that I just described, and the presumption here is that you wouldn't, for example, have been able to apply for the wage subsidy because you couldn't demonstrate that you've lost revenue because you were starting from at a low point and you're actually growing now. This is exactly what this is meant to look at. So if you're in a growth mode, you can't qualify for the wage subsidy, for example, then you should come and talk to us and see what we might be able to do.
All right, so Jordan, there's a good answer for Porter O'Brien. And by the way, FYI, I referred a potential client to you yesterday,
Right.
who I think is going to need some help with communications issue they've got coming up.
Okay.
So Bob Kiley asks, you talk about remedial and recovery support, and is there support for capital asset expansion as well?
Yeah, there is, and through our regular programming. So that all sits there as well. And just so you know, we talked about this being approximately 33 million of a bump to New Brunswick's, the New Brunswick budget.
Mm-hmm.
We also had, we have a bit more than that in our regular programming that we still have available for expansions and I might say this, we've seen, you know, I mean, there's a number of businesses obviously suffering severely as a result of this. There are a number of businesses though as well that are growing exponentially, particularly in some food production. We're seeing that big spikes in IT in terms of businesses that are trying to provide services to adapt people to a more digital platform and in a more seamless way of operating. They need money, but they need it for a different reason. They need it to grow. And so we do have programs available for that as well.
Okay. Next question is from Jennifer O'Donnell. She's with BioNB, and she and a number of her team are on the call today. Do you see any way for the RRRF to support pre-revenue companies? We've heard the recent IRAP Industrial Assistance Program doesn't support companies who are invested in research-intensive pre-commercial projects.
Yeah, I mean, the condition that you'll see this on our application form is that you have to have been in business since as of March 2020, at least March 15th. It's not typically a space under this program that we'd be looking for. I think, you know, for the most part, you have to show that there is some impact here as a result of COVID-19. This is meant to be a response to that. And so if you haven't had a ton of revenues and you're not seeing some of that impact, this may not be for you. But I do, the program that was referenced, you know, you may want to have a conversation with you anyway, just so that we can really understand that gap better, and maybe we can feed that back up as we have regular engagement with various departments in Ottawa around this. So I would say call us anyway. I don't want to get people's hopes up, but call us anyway, perhaps explain this out a little bit more. We'll take some notes on it, and then we'll feed it up through our channels.
I think one of the challenges for those pre-revenue companies is that the pre-revenue runway is a lot longer than they had anticipated. So although you can't say it's impacted in the sense of losing revenue, they are losing the time in which they would have made revenue. So it is impacted by COVID-19 for sure. From our own office, Morgan Peters has said, could you provide a paragraph or some information on who is a typical ACOA client and who should go the CBDC route, because we will be including this information in our update to members today. So you have a chance to have an impact on what we tell them about your program.
Okay, I can certainly, I want to follow up in writing on this, but I'll verbally sort of give you a thumbnail sketch of this. So anyone who's involved in value-added production.
That would be perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, manufacturing, if you're a tech firm, if you're into ICT, if you know, we would deal with not some organizations that provide support to businesses as well. So in the not-for-profit sector,
Okay.
those kinds of things typically, but what we generally exclude are services that are of a personal nature. So doctors, lawyers, accountants, that kind of service where you know, you're dealing with a market that's fairly well established, and then also retail. So
Okay.
those are the things that we don't do. And on the other side, I'll provide you with a comprehensive list.
Okay. I see we've got some information from Ann Kenny with the Canada Business Service Center number. Marie Thibault has given a toll-free number and a number for a deaf and hard of hearing. And I see an announcement here from Trina McDonald from Business Fredericton North. They too are doing a PPE grant for their members. It's a $250 grant, and they let's see, they're investing $5,000, and of that, they sent the application out this morning to their members, and 4,000 of their 5 is already committed to members who have likely spent lots more than that. So whatever support you can send BFN's way or DFI and the other downtowns is going to be greatly appreciated by their members as well. Let's see. Scott K says the application form for the RRF asks if the applicant has applied to the CERB program, but that's a program for individuals, not businesses. If a company has temporarily laid off employees who are benefiting from CERB, should the business applicant indicate that? Because again, that is an individual. The business isn't benefiting from it, the individuals are.
Right. Yeah, if you're an individual, like I said before, the CERB, we see that as a vehicle where small businesses, unincorporated businesses that have, you know, 1 or 2 employees have applied through that mechanism.
Okay.
And not through, you know, if you're incorporated and you've gone through a bank. If you're applying through CERB as an individual, yes, indicate that you have applied. And then we would ask you at that point, what are your needs above and beyond what's already been offered. So
indicating that you've applied to the CERB program is only if the business owner themselves has applied, and it has nothing to do if their employees have applied, because that would be their individual application.
Correct.
So Scott, I think that answers your question. Let's see. We have another question. Do we have any sense of how the 110 million will be allocated in other Atlantic provinces? Keeping in mind that the focus here is New Brunswick. I would think it all is coming to New Brunswick. Is that correct?
No. You know, I mentioned earlier that our anticipation is that 33 million. That's our rough. Is there any? And a lot of this we're going to have to deal on demand, right?
Right.
And I might point out that, you know, here in New Brunswick, the province of New Brunswick is very quick out of the gate with all their own programs. So the needs may be different from one jurisdiction to another. But notionally right now, by our back of the envelope calculations, are around 33 million for New Brunswick. And so we indicated the announcement was for 110 million. So that's around 30%. Okay. And generally speaking, that's what New Brunswick is doing out of total programs for ACOA. And it usually follows 30% in Newfoundland, Labrador, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick, and usually around 10% in PEI.
All right.
Typically.
Kent, we've got about 5 minutes left. There are no more questions in the queue. I don't see anybody's hand up. So I'd offer you the floor to give any last closing remarks, and then I'm going to tie it all together in a couple minutes from now.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that it's there's a lot of info that I provided here today. It's really complex. And I also appreciate there probably is a bit of frustration in terms of the complexity of all of this. And so as we try and wade through this, we just ask for a little bit more patience. But I would encourage everybody to reach out to the numbers that have been provided and to have a conversation. One of the things that we've been experiencing is that we were online very early on, and a lot of departments weren't. And so we had the benefit of having a one-on-one conversation with a number of clients, and we've started to build up a bit of a repertoire of information that we find is helpful to folks. And so I encourage you to take advantage of that, and just know that like I say, there's no wrong door. We'll see what, if we can't solve your problem immediately, we're going to try and figure out who can. And if there's no one who can now, at least that's also valuable information for us to have, because we can link that up to Ottawa and keep this rolling along.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Kent, and thanks to a number of members of your team that are on the call today. I'm going to read out the toll-free number because for the recording, people won't see the chat. So it's 1-888-576-4444. And we will be providing an update and some links in our update today. So I know that Morgan will be in touch with you or your office today to make sure that we have everything that you would want us to share and ways for people to get in touch. I thank everybody for attending today. This has been very informative, in particular since a new program was announced yesterday. You would think that Kent and I may have had the inside lane on that. I did not. I'm not sure about Kent.
I did not either. So glad it worked out.
The timing is very good, and I certainly know that we have a lot of members that for one reason or another were not eligible for CEBA, so this is welcome news for those members in particular. And I know that there are some on the call who will be following up with your office with some of the information that you've provided. So thanks again, Kent and the team at ACOA. We very much appreciate you sharing this information with us. And I'm sure over the next number of weeks and months, we'll be in touch on a regular basis to help get information that we can share out to our members on behalf of your team.
Thanks very much.